Welcome back to the Friends Without Benefits podcast. I got a very special guest today, William Branch. I think you may be the most famous person that I've ever had on this podcast right now.
Come on. Well, thanks for having me. I've enjoyed to get this started with you.
I want to say the most popular people I think in Rockwall is Shaq, Josh Howerton, William Branch.
Oh my gosh. That's too flattering.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and, kind of your upbringing.
Yeah. So, been in Rockwall for 41 years. I went to Rockwall High School, went to Tech for a year, then graduated UTA, and mom's been here since the 80s, and just seeing Rockwall grow has been incredible. And it's like I look back, and when I talk to people who've been here for a while, it's like, hey, remember this store, remember this place, but to see where Rockwall is now, and to now think, okay, well, what's it going to look like in 10 years, is even crazier.
Right. We actually moved out here in 2020. And when we did, it has already just boomed. It's like the entire economy has really, but it seems like the population has grown substantial since we got here.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what it was like, back in the 80s.
I don't even know how many people are here now, but it's like now I was having a conversation with my neighbor, and she was talking, hey, did you hear about multifamily and apartments coming to Heath? And I was like, for one, I don't think that's going to happen. But I just started thinking, if we already have a water issue now, if you bring in all these modular homes and apartments, we're going to have an even bigger issue.
Now, I could be completely wrong, but doesn't Heath have like an ordinance against like overpopulation there? Like they have a certain number of population they're going to allow for family residential, and then that was it.
I don't know that number, but we were talking that they were trying to come in and change the bylaws. And I'm like, so I reached out to, a buddy of mine that's in commercial real estate, and I asked him, I said, hey, do you know anything about this? And he said, they're meeting tonight at the zoning committee, and he said it's not happening.
Really?
But could be shocked. We'll see.
Well, they've already started building that new apartment complex in the downtown Rockwall area, and the traffic is already atrocious enough.
Yeah.
Coming in off of 66, they've got that big place, and they've leveled it out pretty quickly too. It seems, I don't even know when that's supposed to be done, but how do you think that's going to like really affect like that traffic down there? Is going to be even worse.
Well, I mean, obviously leading up to the square, it's just a 4-lane highway, and then it goes to a 2-lane. Right. So just the downtown square, I don't know where they're going to put it. There's nowhere to add more road footage there. So it's just going to make it, I would say, probably not good, in my opinion. So we'll see. It seems like just crossing 30 these days, it's like you really don't even want to cross the lake because it's backed up bumper to bumper.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more and stuff. So tell us a little bit. So you've been here, you said 41 years. So are you not born native to Rockwall?
I've lived here my whole life.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, Rockwall native. When I graduated college, I played professional golf or mini tour golf for a little while, trying to chase the ball, and had aspiration of making it on tour. I saw there's 2 guys that live here in town that they were on tour, and when I saw that they were going to get out and go to work, I'm like, well, they can beat me, and they're leaving, so it's probably time for me to start thinking about getting into a career.
Yeah.
And I bartended for 10 years, and I think that's kind of where I met most of my people. And it's funny, like whenever somebody says, "Hey, Will," it's like I know that those are my people when I was working in the bar, and then because it's kind of a running joke when somebody says that, "Hey, that's probably somebody from the bar," when they call you Will versus William.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So what are you doing now that's made you just so popular here in the area too?
I would say really it's not popularity. It's, I'm all about relationships and just meeting people and just being genuine, that just networking and getting to know other people. And I would say that I try to find good, in our business, in the mortgage business, have good other businesses that I know and trust that I can then refer other people to those people. So it's really trying to, give more than take.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's the biggest portion of it, is kind of creating those relationships that last. Is how people are really kind of stepping up, I guess, in their business. But everybody knows you, which is good because you've built those relationships, and I mean, that's got to be super helpful.
Yeah. And I would just say, networking and doing all that,
Yeah.
has kind of been a huge plus of, you know, people getting to know who I am as not just a mortgage lender, but also as a person.
Hmm.
And that's really where I try to start is, you know, getting to know somebody at a deeper level than just, hey, how can we do business together?
Right. How long have you been in the actual mortgage business for again?
I got started in 2011.
Okay.
You know, kind of a funny story. I was actually going to go get into real estate. My mom's been in real estate since '95, and you know, that was really before real estate was sold on social media.
Mm.
Facebook was just getting started. I remember when that IPO'd, and it was kind of one of those things. And now it seems like real estate is to push it and get more views and so forth. It's done through social media,
Yeah.
and the technology of what video is done and so forth. And so when I got started, mom was like, hey, you know, you'll be a great agent. And she's like, but you like numbers. Why don't you try lending? And
Mhm.
so I was like, perfect. There's a guy that I worked at a place called Blue Canyon that's no longer there. It's where Sear is today. And he worked at Prime Lending. And he's like, come down. I went down and checked it out. It's a call center. You know, I don't know anything about mortgages.
Mhm.
And he's like, well, what do y'all do? And he's like, well, we get all these leads and they come through this call center. You call them and you close the loans.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll give it a shot. And so I went down and said, hey, mom, I'm going to go work for Prime Lending. And she's like, well, that's great. I won't use you for 2 years.
Yeah. No, I can see that.
And so it's kind of funny. My brother was graduating college. I'll be real quick with the story, but there was my old business partner worked at a place called Willow Bend Mortgage, and that's where I got started. A guy named
Okay.
Craig Strink taught me the business. My brother got the job as the assistant. It made half of what I made working bartending 3 days a week, and I'm like, I'm not gonna make that kind of money. I'll go figure it out on my own.
Mhm.
Well, my brother got a job the next day paying double at Accenture. So my mom's like, hey, I think you should really go learn from this guy. Go learn the business. It would be really good for you. And so I did a 2-year internship. And then when that ended, I went out on my own, worked for him for a year. And then my old business partner called me back. She's like, hey, I'm doing this coaching thing. Why don't you come check it out? And then I was like, well, what is it? And she's like, well, it's this coaching thing. And it's really helped me grow my business. I've doubled my business in 6 months. And I'm like, well, how much does it cost? She's like, it's $400. And I was like, well, at the time I really didn't have $400 to spend.
Mhm.
So we started partnering up, kind of mentoring. And then eventually I joined her, and then we started a business together. And then COVID happened 2020, and eventually we parted ways. And so I started my own branch. And you know, God has a plan. At the time, I was so busy that I didn't have the time for the disruption in the business, but it really taught me, it's like, I got you, just slow down, and everything took care of itself.
Yeah.
And so just having those relationships that I had worked with at our previous company, I made the call and it's like, hey, I need some help here. Here's what I'm struggling with. And they're like, well, why don't you come work with us? And it's just, God's taken care of, you know, anything. And it's taught me a lot about life
Right.
and just how to, you know, you don't always have to be so fast.
Right.
And, you know, when things slow down or whatever, it's like God's telling you, hey, I got you. It's time to just kind of reanalyze things. And, you know, we're ready for the next level of you know, where I want your projection.
For sure. So you've been doing this now for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
You came in at 2011. So that was kind of during the recovery of the crash, right?
Yeah.
Was that a benefit to start then? Was that like a good time? Or do you feel like that was still more of a challenge because people were going through, you know, foreclosures, everything?
You know, that was kind of phasing. You know, interest rates at the time were around 4.25, 4.5.
Mhm.
And, you know, I didn't know any different, but it's kind of been just kind of a trajectory up. And
Right.
then obviously, you know, now we're in this, you know, mid sixes, high sixes interest rates. It's a different model of how we, you know, get people into homes with buy downs and so forth. So, it's been a huge learning curve from the start. But at the time, I remember that was when Dodd-Frank came out. It was about, I don't know, I was in 6 months into the business, and you could make money on the front, money on the back. And when the laws changed, there were guys that were getting out of the business like, hey, we can no longer do this. Well, they made a mistake because there was a huge opportunity between now and 2022
Mhm.
that, you know, it was like they missed out on a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't know anything at the time. So
Right. And right now, I think if you're getting into the mortgage business, you're hitting it at the hardest time. Like this has been quite a challenge, I would say, even in probably the 15 years that you've been doing it.
it has, you know, I tell people it's like, if you're really going to do it, you got to do it full time. You can't do it part time.
Right.
You know, I do, you can do it on the side, but it's you can't do it just if you're working a full-time job. You have to really be in it day in and day out.
Right.
So I'm not saying it's impossible, but at the same time, I mean, we have so many guidelines, so many things that we have to learn all the time that it's not going to be tough, but it's just going to be tougher for you to kind of get deals. And, agents like yourself, it's like when y'all write a contract, you don't want any problems throughout the loan.
Right.
And so developing that trust and so forth, I really think that if you're going to get in the business, you need to learn and train under somebody as like an assistant for a good 12, 18 months before you really can grasp the concept of everything.
Sure. And, it's funny because you said your mom said, hey, I'm not going to use you for 2 years. I've had friends who have switched over into the mortgage thing, and they assumed that I was just going to pick up and take over, or they were going to take over my business. And I'm like, hey, man, like, one, I've established relationships, but I've established relationships with people who are doing a very good job, because not every file is the exact same, and you always run into those hiccups that come along with it. But if they don't know how to problem solve that because they haven't seen it, I'm not waiting for you to go to this next person to this next person to try and figure out the problem, because we really need to be able to solve this together right now. And I've had some people who are just kind of a little spiteful, like previous friends who it seemed a little bit spiteful, that they're like, well, why aren't you using me, man? I just got this. And I get it. It's probably the same reason that my own friends, when I switched out of law enforcement into becoming a real estate agent, they didn't use me. It took, I think, 3 years before my first friend who knew me beforehand actually used me to buy a house.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it's the same way.
And that was kind of me starting out. I was working in the restaurant and, just talking to people, telling them, hey, this is what I do. And if you ever need anything. And so like my first 6 transactions, it was before my mom really even trusted me, because she wanted to see, hey, okay, this guy's starting to close some loans. He's starting to figure it out. And, but having that background of a team to be able to help understand.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. So, you've given your friends an opportunity, but I think that, like you said, it's the problems are found up front before you go under contract, not during contract.
Right. Right. And I even say it now too, like the real estate agents who are coming in, like you said before, like this is one of those things where you have to commit to it full time. And when I was getting out, because I was working at Plano for the police department out there, I was making a very good salary. I had the benefits, plus I have a wife and 2 kids. So getting out of that and getting straight into becoming a real estate agent, where everybody has a license, it seems, it's a hard challenge. And people are like, well, why don't you just do it on the side? Well, one, I'm working every other weekend. I'm working, 2 to 3 days during the week, depending on what shift it is, because I'm on 12-hour days. I said, I can't do this full time. I can't do law enforcement full time and then do this on the side and expect to be successful with it. I said, I have to just go all in. And everybody's like, well, great. We'll see you next year underneath the bridge sucking dick for Coke. You know what I mean? But it's not, I mean, it ended up working out really great. I think that, I started at Regal Realtors, and it was a great opportunity for me because they did provide some of the leads. And then I had kind of, a decent network of people over the last 2 years that I had been living here, and started making the friends. And you're right. It's a lot about just networking. And that's how it really kind of took off for me too. But I see the people struggling right now with it.
Yeah. So you started in 2020?
Yes.
Okay.
No. Sorry. 2022.
2022.
Yeah.
So only 3 years.
Right.
Okay.
4, a little over 4.
Yeah. So were you working at part-time?
No. I jumped head first. I left the department, and it was funny because I took my test, and this is going to probably look bad. I failed it the first time.
Yeah.
And I had already put my notice in for the police department, so I was leaving in 2 weeks, and I failed the test. I said, oh man, I fucked up big time. I said, so I went and I was studying, and I think the reason that I failed it the first time is because I had a song stuck in my head. When I was driving there, I started singing it. I got there, I couldn't shake it. So I'm reading these questions with this song literally repeating in my head. And I got through the first test, and I was exhausted afterwards. And I thought this was it. It said I passed. I was like, great. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, we'll go ahead and set you up for the second test. I said second test, and I didn't realize it was a national and the state. And I didn't bomb it, but I definitely failed it by probably 4 or 5 questions. And so I was panicked. I was panicked a little bit because I thought, I just quit my job already. I've already put my notice in. I can't go, by the way, I'm going to need an extra month because I couldn't be smart enough to pass this test. But I think that I still need to jump into this full throttle. But
It's funny you say that. And, you being successful, you fail in a test. It's a standardized test, and that doesn't dictate whether you're going to be a good agent or a bad agent. I did the same thing. I failed one of the tests.
Yeah.
And so went back. I basically, rewrote the test. I didn't know how they were going to answer the questions. And I remember taking that test and just reading the first part of the question. I was like, oh, there's the answer. Boom. Whereas, it's designed to trick you. And it's like, if you just read the question thoroughly and then go and pick your answer,
Right.
you don't, to be successful in this business, if you pass or fail the first time, it's not going to dictate whether you're going to be a great agent or a great lender or not.
No, I agree too. And I think if I would have taken the course at like Champions, I would have done probably substantially better on the test because you are learning it from somebody else. I'm sitting here, I did it online.
Yeah.
In fact, I was doing the coursework while I was at work, like on night shifts in between calls. So I'm sitting here and I'm reading everything, and there's only so much you can really comprehend on that when you don't really know exactly what you were doing. But I had a little bit of background in real estate when I was doing some real estate investing in California. And so I feel like that it did help transfer like real world experience for when I passed the test. But taking that test, man, they got all the kinds of math on there, everything. And I'm thinking, yeah, I punch this into Google or a calculator, and this is going to give me the answer. I shouldn't have to compute this myself.
So you didn't go through the exam prep course?
No,
I bet if you would have done that, it probably would have helped you a little bit.
probably. I had something that was called like night before the test, which was another online thing just to give you questions, and that's all I took. But that was my only prep that I really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. It was a little bit different.
Well, I do that CompuCram or whatever it's called. That's once I was getting to where I was making 80s and 90s in the tests, it was easy peasy.
Yeah.
That second go around because I knew what I was looking for.
Yeah. So what gave you the confidence to go out and say, you know what, I'm going to do this thing. I'm going to start this on my own.
Well, I think at the time it happened during COVID, and it was just me and an assistant. My partner had said, "Hey, we had built a branch together," and she went and said, "Hey," took the assistants and said, "Hey, I'm going to do this. Will y'all come with me?" And then gave me the news on May 25th of 2020. And at the time I was ramping up. We were doing 12, 15 loans a month at the time. And she kind of put a halt on how many we could do a month. And whenever there was a transaction that she was doing that I was like, I didn't disagree because she would have came back at me on how I set the file up or so forth. So I was like, hey, if you're going to do this, we should run down the same lane. And then I finally said, hey, I just don't think our business mindsets are running the same lane anymore. And so when she did that, I was shocked. But she's like, hey, I was like, that's fine. Me and my assistant will split the underwriter, so forth. And she said, no, like, you need to figure this out. Go file your own processor. You're not getting any of these people to help support you, which we've already created one system. And so that's when I reached out to my counterparts who I used to work with, who we worked for 5.5 years. They were at a different company. And I just did it. I mean, it was like, hey, I have these loans, they're stacking up. This was during the refi boom where this was before rates even hit 2%. They were like 2.8, and it was just coming in. And, it was just a godsend. It was that first month out, I ended up doing like 53 loans that month.
Oh, wow.
So at that time, I mean, we had a building together. We sold the building. If I'd have known what COVID would have done today, I would have done things a little bit different, but we couldn't predict what was going to happen when COVID happened.
Right.
And so it was just having faith,
right.
I think was the biggest thing, that going to work with the group that I knew, and it was just like picking up. And so we started a branch and now have started to grow it now. And I don't know where the next 5 to 10 years looks, but my goal is to not only help myself, but to help my other team members succeed as well. And it's been great.
So how many people do you have now working for you?
I have 2 that are full time, and then I have a couple people, like you said, that are doing it part time. And so we help them. It's a little bit tougher for those guys that are doing it part time, but we really have created a deal where it's like if they can go develop the relationship with the client, we'll help them through the process, so they're not having to do the day-to-day operations as far as all the paperwork and making sure everything's going to go through processing and underwriting smoothly. So we do that piece.
Okay.
And so for them, they're able to still work their full-time job. I do have one guy that he's really working hard to try to make this more of his full-time job. He's good. He's Hispanic. And so where I think that's a huge niche that he has, that be able to work with that. clientele that and be really good at it.
Oh, for sure, because it is hard to find a Spanish speaking loan officer.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. I've had, I think, one or two, and they're usually so busy that they're terrible.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to get them to respond and answer, like, if I call them and have questions or whatever, especially like I-10. If you do something I-10 related, I can almost never get a response. And I think it's because they are so busy because there's just so few and far between.
Yeah, and that's that's a tougher product. We do have those programs. It's just a tougher product. Make sure you set those loans up front, and that they meet all the guidelines and so forth. There's just different overlays with that.
Sure.
With that program.
Is there any programs right now that you can kind of tell any of the viewers, maybe first-time home buyers, that you would highly recommend they give you a call about?
Yeah, I think that if you're a first-time home buyer and you're renting a house right now, just take that number that you pay in rent and divide it and multiply it by 12 and times that by 4 or 5. And that's how much money you're wasting giving somebody else paying their mortgage. That there are programs out there designed specifically, it used to be designed for first-time home buyers, but you can literally buy a house with little to no money out of pocket. There are many times that they're actually my favorite loans that we close that we get all of their earnest money back. So it basically costs them the cost of an inspection to buy a house, which is $500. And so to be able to buy a house today for $500, and then in 5 to 7 years time, they come and say, hey, we now have $50,000 to $70,000 equity. Whereas if they hadn't done that, they would still be sitting in that rental box with very little, money in the bank.
Right. Yeah, I've done a couple of VA loans. VA loans, 0% down, and I've had it to where they were getting money back at closing because obviously they have to put down an earnest money deposit, your option fee. But after everything was said and done, we got closing costs that were already covered. We got everything back. They ended up paying literally nothing for the house to get into it. And I'm like, man, you can't even beat this. This is cheaper than getting into a rental because then you got to pay security deposits and everything else. So I've had that where I've had rentals or renters before who are looking for rental properties and they go, well, this one really isn't for us. And I'm said, well, have you thought about buying a house? And they're like, no, we really can't afford that. Well, hang on, let's talk through it because there's first time home buyer programs and stuff. There's all of these other things we can get seller concessions, especially in today's market. It seems almost like every transaction is doing some sort of seller concession. I said, we might be able to get you in for cheaper than a rental.
You can.
And they're like,
because
really?
if you're paying $2,500 in rent, it's going to cost you $5,000 to get into the house.
Right.
So be able to go buy your own home and start building your own equity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's been, and I think that's converted quite a bit of things for me.
Yeah.
So it's been nice. I've stayed busy even then. This has been relatively, would you consider a down market for the most part. And I've been very fortunate. I do several deals every year, and I think it's just being able to problem solve and have some of the right lenders. The lenders are going to make a big difference because I've also had lenders who go, hey, yeah, their credit's not the greatest. So, we're going to try and work this out. But it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And then I send them to another lender. They're like, great, we got them pre-approved.
Yeah.
So how is there this big of a difference? Maybe you could shed a little bit of light on that. Like, why is there a change?
Well, I guess as far as that goes, some lenders don't take the time to help somebody. It may just be a small couple tweaks with their credit, pay certain things down. We work with a great credit advisor here locally that he turns our clients within 4 to 6 months. If your credit's not been great, he can take collections off of your credit to help boost your scores. And so it's just creating that plan with those buyers that may not have credit versus just saying, hey, you can't buy, and then they don't do anything with it. It's working with a credit repair person or helping them fix it with our software, but then also staying in front to check in, hey, how's credit repair going? Making sure they got signed up, going through that process versus just saying, hey, you can't buy, see you later, on to the next.
Right.
And so that's something that we strive to do as a lender. It's like, hey, we want everybody to buy a house.
Right.
And so how do we do that and give them that plan and give them that hope?
Yeah. So if you got a new person who is looking to get into like the mortgage field, do you have any advice? Is there any classes they should take besides the actual just regular coursework that kind of helps make them more successful, you think?
There's not necessarily a class. It's really more hands-on of being able to see files day in and day out, understanding what to look for on credit and so forth. And that's where I think that having a team like, who we have behind us that can help them review things without them having to say, try to figure it out on their own.
Mm-hmm.
When I learned, it was like, hey, this was before we were paperless. It was stack your files, put the driver's license, put all the things, got your checklist. And it's completely different today because there's not one paper file that we have today.
Really?
But just finding a mentor that's going to really help you through the process, understanding the different programs and so forth, but also somebody's going to look over your back on every single transaction until you can kind of figure out, understand what's happening to kind of, you talked about problems in a file, being able to pick those up before they even happen and saying, oh, well, the underwriter said this. Well, you should have pre-underwrote the file to begin with to know what's going to be needed before it got to the underwriter.
Right.
And so, and I think that's what separates most lenders. And it drives me to drink sometimes when I hear that. It's like you get under contract and it's like all of a sudden we've hit this just, block in the road. And it's like, well, that should have probably been caught up front if you had really done it. Whereas there's loan officers out there to get a pre-approval. All you have to do is just stick your information through a system. And then, hey, the income that you put in the computer, some companies will spit out a pre-approval instantaneously.
Right.
Well, did they look at your income? Did they look at how you get paid? Are you paid hourly? Do you work 40-hour work weeks? Is it 1 week you work 40, the next week you work 32 hours? Well, that's considered variable pay. How long you've been on your job at that point? So there's different guidelines for each program and understanding, okay, well, what's the time frame of figuring out that loan? Is it going to be able to, when you get it to underwriting, is it going to go through? Because time is money. And then also too, like you're out showing them houses and then you get under contract and all of a sudden we have a problem.
Right. And that's the biggest thing. I've had it where I had a pre-approval already done. Now, granted, they wanted to use their own lender. It was a buyer of mine. And we got down to, I think it was a week before closing. And he calls me. He's like, they're not going to qualify based on this house that they have that's owner financed. And so I had called up another lender at the time. And I said, hey, man, I have a 911 file. Can you take care of this? He's like, I can get it done within about 7 days, but just to be sure, we probably need about 10. 28 days later, literally almost a month later, he goes, yeah, man, I just don't see it in the cards. And this is after he told me that she had to get rid of this house outside, like the one that she was owner financing. She needed to sell that house. And so she ended up selling it to her boyfriend or something like that, who they had originally got into this house together. She gave it to him, got everything out of her name, and he goes, yeah, she's not going to qualify. And I was devastated. I said, there's no way you are going to mess this thing up after you told her you would qualify as long as you get rid of this house. She gets rid of the house, then you tell her that she's not going to qualify. It was an absolute nightmare. And I remember sitting in front of his desk, and I'm not going to say who it was, but I was absolutely, I was enraged. We ended up working it out. She ended up getting qualified for it because all we needed was a letter from the landlord saying that she didn't actually owe any money on this property and that it was going to be transferred over to him. And he ended up signing it. We got it through the underwriter and we were able to close on it. And I was so relieved. But I gave up like a large portion of my commission on that just to try and make it work. And that's okay because I don't mind sometimes having to do that because you'll make it up in the long run where somebody's going to call you back for the referral business and that's more than worth it. But I was willing to give up everything because she was going to have no place to live.
Yeah.
And and I won't use that lender ever again. I would never use the first lender that she ever had to begin with. But this was just something I had to use one of these lenders because it was a lead that had came through. But in the end, I think I made $500 on that, and that was the most stressful transaction I've ever had. I was losing hair. I ended up having to take minoxidil and finasteride just to bring it back after that transaction.
Well, I mean, there are certain things. I mean, it's happened to me before too. So it can happen. Does it happen often? No.
Right.
99% of the time it doesn't. And so, but sometimes that does happen. But things that you don't ever necessarily see, like especially it's like when you're working with a lender going through the process, you need to tell them everything.
Right.
As far as, especially if you own other real estate that, may be in your name or, hey, it's in my mom's name, but my name's also on title and so forth. I mean, those things that's going to pop up. We have the technology today to be able to pull that stuff.
Right.
And so, at that point it's like pivot and how do you fix it? What are things that we can do? And, So, but yeah, that does happen. But it's the worst feeling, and I hate when that if it ever does happen, because I'm sure you probably lost sleep for days
Oh yeah, for sure.
because you referred them to somebody, they've done all these things, and then it's like, oh my gosh, like
Hmm.
it's gut wrenching, and sometimes it takes 24 to 48 hours to kind of come up with that plan and figure it out, and it's like there's many times where I'll wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, bingo, found the answer.
Right. And I think that's the key portion of it is like on my side, even though I'm not the mortgage is your guys.
Hmm.
I leave that to you guys to do all the explanations because that's your guys' level of expertise. But it's good to have a little bit of that expertise and knowledge under my own belt because sometimes if my lender doesn't know and we're talking about it, at least we can brainstorm it together.
Yeah.
Very tactical when it comes to a lot of stuff. And I think that's what really separates the good lenders and the good agents is having the ways to problem solve.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, second a problem comes up, it's like, man, yeah, no, that's a problem. Can't, it doesn't look like they're going to qualify. Well, hang on. We need to problem solve this together. If we've literally exhausted everything that I know, then maybe okay, it's time.
Yeah.
Or they decide realistically it's not that there's a problem, it's just that they've changed their mind and I can't change it. That's fine too.
Yeah.
But when the problems arise, if we can't problem solve it together, I mean, or that's the biggest thing. We should be able to problem solve them together.
Yeah. What do you, so from your perspective, what are you seeing as some of the problems that we're seeing in the market right now, from the real estate angle?
I think that some of the biggest things that we're seeing is interest rates. Everybody's really concerned with the interest rates because everything is inflated. Like the cost of goods in general is high, and everything is so expensive right now. House prices have, I would say, slowed down, and especially when it comes to like new construction. New construction, you can get great rates, everything like that, but it's almost like buying a new car. The second you purchase it, you've lost 10% in value.
Yeah.
Because now who's going to buy your house if you decide you're going to sell it in a year? Who's buying that house at the same price that you just paid for it when they can buy the exact same thing brand new, sometimes for $5,000 more or 20 or $30,000 less? Because that's happened quite a bit because they're just pumping them up, going, "Hey, we're getting you these rates," but realistically, it's because the house prices are inflated for what they're going to be. And so I've seen that as a big issue. Property taxes, of course, are really high here in Texas. And so once you pair property taxes on top of increasing insurance, on top of already, high prices for houses and higher interest rates, it's hard to say when people are paying $400,000 for a house and their house payment is $3,200 a month, $3,300 a month. It's really hard for some people if they're not making that kind of money.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, to speak on that, and that's where, like you said, majority of every transaction that's happening right now with the seller concessions, for some, doing a 2-1 or 3-2-1 buy down and so forth, it helps with affordability, but that's for a short stint.
Right.
Interest rates, they've been in this window from 5.7 to 7.2 for 5 years since 2022. We've all said, hey, marry the house, date the rate. But that's at least giving somebody the opportunity with a lower payment those first several years. And as far as the opportunity for people now, it's when was the best time to buy a house?
Yesterday.
5 years
Yeah.
5 years ago, right? And so what is it going to look like 5 years from now? Like, hey, I should have bought 5 years ago, because at some point I feel like interest rates are going to come down.
Right.
Seeing projections that they're going to start easing things, and towards the end of the year we may see them at 6.2, 6.3. I think that would really kind of spark the market. But when interest rates do come down, well, guess what happens? It's going to be, you're going to have more people enter the market. You're going to have less concessions. And whereas now, if a home's on the market for 30 days, well, hey, we got bargaining power here. We can
Sure.
negotiate on price. We can negotiate on closing costs. And it's going to allow somebody to get into a home at a much cheaper out of pocket up front than it will be when that time comes, when interest rates do come down, because we're going to be back into a frenzy again. And what's going to happen with house prices? They're going to start to trend back up.
Right. And I mean, realistically, during a normal market, house prices are increasing maybe 2 to 3% a year. And everybody's trying to time it right now. It's a fear. It's definitely a fear situation, because at the beginning of this year, I mean, we moved into this house and I was able to lock in at a low 5% rate, which is fantastic. And that's why houses were flying off. I was making 3 to 4 sales a month at the beginning of the year. And since, the war in Iran has started, um, those interest rates have just ticked up and up and up and up. And now they'll come back down and they'll fluctuate a little bit. But it seems like a lot of people are waiting for some big market to crash. And could it happen? I mean, I guess so. But at the same time, from everything that I've been reading, granted, I don't know if this is biased in news because everybody's trying to, you know, I guess sell their agenda or whatever it is, if it's political or whatnot. But there isn't a whole lot of foreclosure situations going on right now. The people who are having the hardest time selling are the people who bought 2 years ago. And I understand that. But you're always going to have a hard time selling if you've only owned the house for 2 years.
Yeah.
You need to have it 5 to 10 in order to probably turn profit or at least not have to come out with a bunch of money.
Yeah. And so like during COVID, I mean, home prices went up, what, 25% each year.
Oh, I know it.
So, it was like at that time you could pretty much almost double your money or make $100,000 in 12 months or 18 months. That's not realistic. So it went way up too fast.
Right.
And so it has to correct itself. And so it's done that slowly. So, but the question is, where's the bottom?
Right.
So like you said, you mentioned fear. And so, it's buying a house. It's going to be very difficult to time the market.
Right.
And, if you find a house that you love, do it. I find all the time that, hey, I have a 2% rate or I got a 3% rate. Well, that's great. You don't have to lose it. Have you thought about potentially renting this house and be able to pull your cash out? You have no money into the deal and you got somebody else paying your mortgage and now you can go find your dream home and utilizing a buy down to where we can buy down the rates as much as 2 to 3%. And that's going to help you with affordability for those first 3 years.
Right.
And that's going to give you time to also be able to, if interest rates do come down, you get to refinance at that point.
And I remember the 2-1 buy down was a big deal. So if for anybody who's listening who doesn't know what a 2-1 buy down is, let's say the interest rate was 7% at the time, because this is a lot of what was going on. 7% was obviously higher. If we got enough in seller concessions, that would make it to where there's 2 years. So your first year you'd be at 5% interest rate. Your second year you'd be paying a 6% interest rate, and then your third year through 30 would be at the
fixed.
regular,
the
fixed rate
time frame.
And I really do feel like that was a very helpful process, because even though rates had ticked up and they're at 7%, they're not at 7% now. Or well, if they are, they're probably not premium credit or anything along those lines. But for the most part, they're in the mid sixes. So if you bought at 7, you still have the opportunity to still refinance now, and I think get a lower rate. But if you bought at 5 with the 2-1 buy down, you're still at 5, which is still a great rate.
Yeah.
So I think that it did help, but I'm starting to see a lot less of those right now than before.
Yeah, I look at it both ways. When I first heard about a 2-1 buy down, I didn't even know what it was. But I mean, they've been around, and it's when rates are higher, that's when these special programs come out to be able to help with affordability in the short run. I have probably, it's about a 50-50 when we start looking at it. So I hold on the money, or what is it better to use that money towards my out of pocket and so forth. But in most cases, I'm either seeing closing costs towards or seller concessions towards their out of pocket expenses, or we're using it towards a buy down depending on the price.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm seeing most of now, is when people are getting those seller concessions, they're using them to cover their closing costs, because they'd rather come to the closing table with $2,000 than come up with $15,000, even though their rate would be lower, their payment would be lower, because it's sometimes $300-400 a month, and some people are like, hey, I'd rather have the extra $300-400 a month over the course of 2 years, because it's going to eventually hit back to your normal rate, but they're willing to do that rather than just having,
it depends on the client. So if you have somebody that's, we're talking about a cash deal to where it's like we got just enough.
Sure.
But on the higher price homes, I mean, $1,000-1,200 a month that first year, then $500, what does that look like? So it's that difference of that money, $10,000 less in a payment or whatnot, then 10,000 is only going to save them $70. Whereas if that same money may save them $1,000 a month for 12 months and then $500 a month, so it really depends on price.
Right. Right. I wish we could go back to some of these. I mean, it's hindsight is 2020, but during COVID, so it was, I think right at the beginning of January 2020 is I was living in Bakersfield and I had a house out there and I said, this whole COVID thing was kicking off. I was already looking here to move here to Texas. I said, we got to get rid of this house because this house is about to absolutely plummet in value and I'm never going to be able to sell it. So my wife and I hurry up. We took our house, we sold it, and Bakersfield is not a super expensive place. I bought that house for about $250. I had put money into the kitchen. I had remodeled the bathroom. I had done quite a bit of stuff throughout the house, and I sold it for $280,000.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, got my $30,000. Moved out here to Rockwall. Bought a house for $300,000, which was a nice 2,000 square foot home with a pool. And so I was like, $300,000. Like this is great. Like it's a little bit more than I had before. But overall, we were still pretty happy with it. And I had talked to my wife and we were debating, should we just hold off? Because the market's probably going to crash with this whole COVID thing. And I said, well, you're already doing investing. I didn't want to not buy a house because we had already bought so many houses before. I said, no, I can't miss it. Let's just go ahead and buy this house. And thank God we did, right? Because obviously there was a huge spike. The house in Bakersfield went up from $280,000 to $380,000 in 1 year. And I was like, why didn't I rent it? Well,
What's it worth today?
Probably right around 420
Okay.
is what I looked up. And that's from California is a disclosure state. So you can look up what the prices are. And I think it's right around, if I ran the comps on it, I think it was 400, 420. So it's not a massive jump up from where it was in 2021. But at the same time, I'm thinking it was a pretty massive jump up if I would have just held on to it for a year. But that's hindsight.
Yeah.
And like you said, I had a 2.8% interest rate on my property in Rockwall, North Rockwall. And
When did you buy that? 2020?
I bought that one in 2020 as well.
And
Yeah.
what's it worth today?
It's worth about.
What'd you buy it for? What's it worth today?
I bought it for 300. It's worth about 440 now, and that's because we sold it in 2024. Yeah, 2024. We had sold it because we needed a bigger house. We had a 19-year-old foster kid that we had previously fostered. He came to live with us, and then it became too small of a home. We needed more space, so we moved out to Roy City. We had bought a house on an acre of land, bigger home, shop, pool, everything like that. Spent an ungodly amount of money, what it felt like, on that property. And that house we ended up selling because the HOA said, you cannot rent this house. Because they put the stipulation in the bylaws that says only a certain amount of these homes can be rented out. But that was after I had purchased it. So I should have fought them on it because I didn't want to sell it. Because my rate was so good. I was paying like $1,600 a month for this really nice home. So we ended up selling it. We sold it for like $430, which was great. We had quite a good profit margin right there. Bought the house out there, realized that was too much. It's too far out. We moved back into Rockwall. We've absolutely loved it ever since.
Yeah. Well, living in Rockwall, it's kind of hard for my wife and I to talk about it. If we were to ever move, where would we go? I'd love to go to the beach at some point, but we're not going to move until, our family's not here anymore. But
Sure.
What I've learned, and looking back, I remember when I sold my first house, kind of the same thing. Like we bought it for $200,000. We got $10,000 in concessions during 2010, and the house been on the market for 6 months over in the Shores. And when we went to sell it, we were ready to move because we were having twins, and my wife didn't want to have upstairs. She wanted a bedroom downstairs. So we were going to sell. I had a little bit of money in my 401k. If I had to do it over again, I would have actually pulled out of my 401k and gone and bought. But living on commissions, like you don't know, it can change from month to month. And looking back on that, I wish I still had that home today because now it's worth $450,000. And my payment on it was $1,600. It now rents for $2,900 a month, and I mean I would have $1,000 cash flow every month, and $200,000 towards my kids' college. Right. And so that's why when I'm looking at these clients that have low interest rates, at least giving them the option to look at it and say, hey, look, what can we? If you've never taken cash out of your house before, let's look at a HELOC and what does that payment look like? What can we then talk to the realtor and say, hey, what can we rent their house for? If we can get close to break even or even have a little bit of cash flow, why not?
Right.
Because you don't buy houses to buy and sell immediately. Like, you buy and wait.
Right.
And so over a 5 to 10 year time frame, if you were to say, okay, what is your house 10 years ago? What's it worth today? You're going to tell me it's either gone up 20, 30, 50, even 100% return. Like, where can you get that kind of cash? Where can you get that kind of return and pull all of you have no money into an investment? You can't make that kind of return.
Sure.
And so, going back to somebody that's first time home buyer, it's like, you can put X amount of dollars into the stock market. Well, if homes appreciate on average, you said 2 to 3%, right? That's about on average. So you take a $300,000 house, that home's appreciating about $9,000 to $10,000 a year each year.
Right.
So scale that out to 10 years from now, you now have $100,000 equity in your house.
Right.
Where can you put $0 into a home and then have $100,000 in equity in 10 years?
Yeah.
You can't make that.
It's leveraging.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I couldn't agree more. I think it's not a temporary thing. If you have to be set going, you know what, I plan on staying here in this area 5 to 7 years. And realistically, if you buy a house, make sure that you want that house and you're able to live in that house for 5 to 7 years. I get a lot of like first time home buyers, newlywed couples, no kids or anything along those lines, want to look for, a 2-bedroom house. That could work if you're planning to have a kid in the next, few years. If you're going to have 2 kids in the next few years, that could work. But is it going to be enough space for you? Do you need to have a guest room, or should we be looking at 3 or 4 bedrooms? Like, because what we don't want is for you to get pregnant, realize that your mom is going to come live with you for a year while the baby's a newborn, or family comes to stay. You need to have guest rooms or anything along those lines. Those houses can get tight. Yeah. So prepare 5 to 7 years. You got to try and plan your life out a little bit. Have a sense of pathway of guidance. Where's your life you predicted it's going to be in the next 7 years? Buy that house. That's the one that you're probably really going to need.
Yeah. Are you seeing clients that are waiting longer to get married, waiting longer to have kids, and then some are having less kids? Because I'm seeing that, like, they're more into their careers, and some of them buy their first house $400,000, $500,000, $600,000. I remember when I bought my first house, I remember going from $800 in an apartment to $1,700 a month. I'm like, how are we going to make this $1,700 house payment?
Right.
It's like, I love seeing that with this younger generation. Like, they're just coming out, they're very smart, they're very educated, and they're going straight for it to the $400,000 or $500,000 houses.
I think that society in general is kind of leaning towards it's changing, and I think people are waiting for the most part. And then some people, they're not waiting for nothing. Like, it's just like hey, we're pregnant. We had this baby. We're pregnant again. Had this baby. We're pregnant again. I'm thinking, how are you affording these kids? Yeah. I don't get it. But I do feel like a lot of people are kind of prioritizing career over the sizes of families, which is probably shrinking our population compared to the rest of the world. But I don't know. I haven't necessarily seen a huge thing where maybe I have. I don't know. I'd have to think more on that.
I see it more and more.
Yeah.
But I see both sides, and there's no right or wrong. Mm-hmm. But I can tell you that if you're a renter today, like, it's get with a real estate agent, get with a lender. And how do you get yourself into a home? It's not your forever home.
Right.
It's your starter home. It's your starter to build. And it could, for one, it could be your initial investment to start a real estate portfolio with no money out of pocket. Mm-hmm. And then 5, 6, 7 years down the road, it's like, hey, Spencer, we're ready to go buy a house.
Right.
Another one. And then how do we do that? It's like, well, we can't afford 2 house notes. Well, yes, you can. It's just creating the plan. We can, with a conventional mortgage, you can take the rent, offset the mortgage, and now you can qualify for 2 mortgages.
Right. And I do think that that's probably the biggest hurdle for first-time home buyers. Is 1, they think they're buying their forever home, or 2, they want the perfect home for them. Like, oh, they want the cute shabby chic home that they saw on Pinterest. Well, that's not really a realistic thing. You can create the character in the home that you want, or you can create the character in a home that you can afford. Because a lot of those, man, people are looking and going, well, I really like the character of a 1930s home. Well, you're not going to like the problems that come with a 1930s home. you need to buy something that's a little bit more up to date, newer, not necessarily new construction, but newer construction to where it's going to last you and you're not having to constantly fork in so much money every month just in repairs, because utilities or just the electric costs for something that is not fully insulated from 1930, 1920. I had one client looking at an 1890s home. I said, that's a 136-year home, that year old home that you're looking at. Do you think that thing's going to be energy efficient? No, those windows are painted shut. It's not going to be efficient at all. Your electric bill is going to be $700 a month if you're trying to keep it cool.
Yeah.
So I feel like they do need to come with a little bit more of a realistic, like, okay, is this going to be a good investment for me long term? Some of those, yes. Some of those, no.
Speaking of that, electric and energy, I mean, I see it all the time that they go and add solar to their house. How often do you find that becomes a problem whenever you go to sell, or, is there really an added benefit to having solar on the homes? I know that the roofers, and they say, hey, it's going to lower your electric bill, and it's like you spent X amount of dollars, but from what I've seen, it's like their electric bill really hasn't even changed.
No, I feel like solar panels are like a pool. So if you have a paid off pool and you're buying it with the house, the pool probably cost you $120,000. Ask me how I know. I just got a couple of quotes. It's $120,000. I said, there's no way that a pool is worth $120,000 to put in. But if you buy it on a house that the pool is already in, it's like $25,000 to $50,000 ahead of what a normal house, comparable house in that same area would be. Much more reasonable price. And the same thing with solar. If you're putting solar on and you lease it, I think that's a terrible idea. Personally, I think that's a horrible idea, because now you have to find a buyer who's willing to take over that lease. If you've purchased that solar, it does that. I would say it adds a little bit of value, but it's about the same amount. You pay $100,000, you're getting 25. You're getting about a quarter, I would say, of what you actually cost, or you actually spent for that. So you pay $60,000 for a system, which is very reasonable, I think, or not reasonable in price, but that's usually about what they would cost if you're trying to offset 100%. $60,000, you might get a $15,000 increase if it's paid off.
Right.
And I do think that that's a good idea. Like, if you can find a house that has a solar system that's fully paid, sure, I would buy that. I mean, we have two Teslas.
Yeah.
And I save a ton of money already over that, but I still looked into what it would cost for Tesla electric to have those panels put on, and with the power bank, everything like that, it's not worth it to me. I'd rather have my discount power where I pay a much lesser price, or, TXU Energy that gives you free nights, and just charge at night. And that will save you, I feel like, more than the solar panels themselves if I actually lease them out or finance them.
Yeah. On the pool thing, I do think that it takes, if you're going to build a pool, it takes time for your equity to build up.
Right.
I think it's kind of like having 4-wheel drive on a car. I always, if we're driving an SUV, I like the 4-wheel drive because for resale value.
Yes.
But you're adding a luxury item to your house, and it costs money, and it's like, what are you willing to pay? Like, you're paying for luxury. You're paying for, when you go out, like, I love to hear the water fountains, run in my pool. We didn't put our pool in, but it was there when we got it. But I get in the pool maybe twice a year. I don't really use it. My kids use it all the time, but I just love that feature. And so that's when you go out in your backyard, it's like you love your backyard. And we would love sitting on the patio and just having that. But like you said, it's like, in that initial investment, like, don't expect to get that back immediately, because it's definitely going to take some time for you to recoup your money.
Right. And I kind of know that we're a family who moves pretty frequently. I get a 4-year itch, and I'm like, yo, I got to move. I think that's the military in me. My dad, he was active duty Air Force, so we moved every 4 years of my life. And ever since then, every 4 years, it's almost like the hairs on the back of my neck stick up. I start to get an itch for a different scenery. And I think the time that it's worth it to buy a pool that you're going to keep it is one that you're using it often.
Yeah.
But that you're going to stay in for 30 plus years. If you're going to stay there for 30 years, sure, get a pool. But if you're not, I just don't feel like it's worth it. You've got to buy a house that already has one.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's 4-wheel drive, because the second you do put it in there, it does become a little bit more valuable. It becomes more attractive for sure. But the house price doesn't really change a whole lot, but it makes it sell quicker. I would say that.
Well, we are used to you'd see $25,000 to $30,000 for a pool as far as an adjustment on a value. So now we are starting to see a little bit more value that's given on appraisals. So, but it's like you said, if you put 100 grand in, you're not going to get the full value on a house. It's kind of like adding a mother-in-law suite that costs you $200,000. You're only going to get 50% of the value of that ad because most people don't have second living spaces,
Sure.
like a mother-in-law suite type thing.
Yeah.
But
The appraisals that I've been seeing, if you got a newer pool, 25 grand. It's almost like it's like they have a set price. It doesn't matter what that pool costs. You might have paid 60 grand for it if you got like a little, kidney bean pool that's nothing special. They probably give you 25 grand. It's the same way that they would give you one for like a resort style pool. But if it's an old pool, it's like 15 grand.
Yeah.
And it's not a massive difference. But if you spent $100,000, because that's what these pools are costing nowadays, I don't know why they're costing $100,000, but if they are, 25 grand. That's
Yeah.
about what the appraisal's coming up with.
So speaking of you being a veteran, did you know that you can have two VA loans at one time?
I did. So I've done that a couple of times.
Okay.
I've had 2 VA loans. Can you do more than that? Can you have a third as long as it's going to be your primary residence or no?
Well, if your spouse was military, you can.
Oh, okay.
So that's when you can use her entitlement. You use your entitlement as long as they haven't used a portion of her entitlement towards any of your other houses.
So do you just have to keep her off title?
No,
Or keep them off title?
well, they're going to use whoever's entitlement they're going to use on the mortgage. You designate that.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So you're
Okay.
not splitting entitlement at that point. So, but with that being able to own two houses, like you mentioned, your last house, obviously the last house is kind of a caveat of the neighborhood due to the HOA dues. But being able to buy a house and then go use, you have your basic entitlement, then you have what's called bonus entitlement that you'd have to maybe put a little bit, if you haven't used all of your entitlement, have to put a little bit of money down on your next house, depending on how much entitlement was used on the first house.
That's what we did when we moved to Roy City. We did have both of them at one time. And that's because this one was up on the market, or we were putting it up on the market. We didn't really want the huge rush of, I have to sell this and we have to move in here in the amount of time. There was no problem with that, but we ended up having to put a little bit extra money down, moved out there, put the house up. Thankfully, it sold really quick because it had a pool.
Yeah.
I think that's
Well,
what it did. But
And I think that's where for veterans, it's advantageous to be able to, especially when they buy their first house, to start thinking, okay, well, down the road, how can we buy two houses with literally less than 5% out of pocket? And I think that's a huge benefit of obviously serving our country. And thank you for serving. What branch were you in?
Air Force.
Air Force.
Yeah.
Being able to utilize that veteran benefit to buy a house.
Right.
And, like you and I know, we're real estate guys. So it's like real estate. It's one of our four buckets of investing. You got your real estate, your 401k, your savings accounts, and then any extra, stuff that you want to buy as far as extra stocks and that kind of thing.
Right.
So, but as a whole, I think that, being able to, the more real estate you have, your long-term, your financial portfolio is going to be much greater than, just investing in the stock market.
Sure. Well, so let me get this last question out for you and stuff. Where do you think your business, or what are you planning to grow your business in the next, let's say, 10 years? And are you just in Texas, or are you able to lend nationally?
We can lend in all 50 states. I'm currently licensed in 17 different states.
Oh, wow.
So, my goal is to help myself and my team also, grow, develop more relationships. I think our business, it's crazy. When I first started, home values were, loan amounts, back in 2014, it was $184,000 loan amounts. And now we're at 350, 360. So I think is inevitable, our volume will continue to grow. I see myself in the next 10 years, mentoring a couple more people to help them get to where they want to go in the mortgage business. So I think that's on my horizon, as well as I have personal goals that I want to obtain. That it's kind of a mind. I'm very competitive, and it's like, how do I get there? So it takes time to get to my goals.
Yeah. Well, you're absolutely crushing it right now. Like I said, everybody knows you. Everybody's always had good things to say. You read your reviews online. They're always positive. So, it's an awesome opportunity to get here, be able to speak to you, kind of everybody else listening in, they can learn a little bit more about the mortgage field. Like if you're looking to get into the mortgage field and you got questions, are they able to reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Would love to have them reach out to me. You know, I love what I do, and it's been a fun journey, and it's being able to take the no's and turn them into yeses.
Right.
And so, used to when I first started, I remember it was like, okay, it was all about money. Like now it's like, how do I create the puzzle and figure it out for somebody?
Sure.
And to be able to help my agents make more money, help them turn more deals that they couldn't turn before. And you know, I'm excited for what's going to happen. Like times right now where real estate may be a little bit tougher, it's like this is where it really makes you grow and improve. Like for one, it helps you improve your systems, it helps you improve your business, it helps you improve your mindset. You know, just having faith.
Right.
And you know, God will lead you where He wants to go, and that's all that matters.
There you go.
It's not about money. It's not about, you know, where do you rank. I mean, everybody has their own where they are. Like what chapter are you in your book?
Mm-hmm.
You know, a new loan officer, a new agent's going to be at chapter 1 or chapter 2. I can't compare myself who's already at chapter 20 because I may be at chapter 10.
Sure.
So, but it's just writing that story and figuring it out, and I'm just excited for what the next 5 to 10 years has to come. Watching my kids graduate high school, you know, already starting to kind of get that kind of ball in motion. And then at that point, it's like, okay, well, where's retirement lead me? What is that? What does that start to look like? So it's starting to think about those kinds of things of where do I need to get to start thinking about that to where what's my last phase so that, you know, you can enjoy retirement.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this has been a very fun episode, man. I appreciate you coming out. How can people get in contact with you if they're looking to qualify for a mortgage?
Well, first of all, they need to talk to you as the agent.
Yeah, absolutely. You come to me.
But yeah, if you need looking for a mortgage, looking for help, if you're in a situation or you have questions or you get denied, you can always reach me at 214-789-0477. That's my direct cell phone number. Work typically 7 days a week, even on vacation. So if you ever have questions, want to know about specific things, would love to help you and your family. And, you know, thank you, Spencer, for having me on this podcast.
Of course.
You know, it's something that I enjoy. You know, you talked about being nervous or whatnot. I think the more that you do this kind of stuff, the easier it gets.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you're starting a podcast yourself too, right? So what's that podcast and when can we expect it up?
Well, we did our first one about 2 weeks ago, so it's in production right now.
All right.
But you know, it's just excited to, you know, meet guys like yourself and just learn about different, you know, parts of the business, like what's made you successful, what's made me successful, and just getting to know other people is, I think, what this is going to be the fun part about podcasting.
Right. I think that's what we kind of like most about this. And this is why it's a very informal podcast. We come out here, we're just liking to meet new people, getting to hear about some of the different businesses that are around here. And, you know, hopefully it's enough of an entertainment podcast that people enjoy listening to it. Yeah. So, well, everybody, thank you again for tuning in. If you would, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and, you know, Will, if you would, what's your podcast name so people can listen out for it again?
I don't have it.
Oh, you haven't figured it out yet? That's okay. All right, so we'll get that figured out later on, and we could probably just add it in here too. So tune in for that to come. But thank you again for, you know, tuning in, and we will see you next time.
See ya.